All right, well, I will call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee. Today is Monday, February 4. We are rescheduled, of course, today, thanks to our snow week last week. I see no public comment, and Mr. Ross, our chairperson, is excused today. So I'll be leading the meeting for, I think, the last and final time. You got me back, like it or not. All right, let's move into the business items. So first is our purchasing agenda. Mr. Oberst.
Yes. Good evening, committee members, and thank you, Ms. Schottke, for filling in.
My pleasure.
This time you're doing it blind, so to speak,
Yes.
since I spent a good amount of time with Mr. Ross a week ago Thursday going over this stuff. Anyways, first on the action items is the purchasing agenda. And Ms. Williams, being new to the committee, welcome again. And we have a policy, a board policy, that any amounts essentially over about $25,000, which is the state mandated threshold for board approval, go on as a purchasing agenda that then comes to the finance committee most of the time, and for you to look at and if you have any questions in it. If you approve it, it goes up to the board, which it will 6:30 and to be approved by the board ultimately. So anyways, the purchasing agenda for this month, actually nothing really out of the ordinary. These are all some of the regular expenses we see from time to time. I think one of the unique items or unique features of this purchasing agenda is there's not much in the bond arena coming up. So bond projects on the second page under C, only one item there for some technology. The rest will come out of the agenda, come from general funds or some special funds. So if anybody has any specific questions on anything on the agenda.
I have a question on item number 2. It asks for additional amount of $70,000 in a blanket order. This is a contract that we have previously approved then?
Yes, it is, and we continue to have a significant need for translation services, and it's been difficult to find enough capacity. So yeah, we've just been approved before, and we just need more translation services.
So this is an additional amount, $70,000 that's being prepared?
New blanket over, yeah, exactly.
My concern here is that we have over 20 different potential providers that are, perhaps some of them Grand Rapids first, but certainly there are a lot of providers out there that provide interpreter services, and I'm concerned in terms of a historical pattern also with respect to consultants and the approval of consultants. In this particular case, you referenced $25,000 as a threshold for board approval and board review, which I think is very important. I've asked for in the past, and at least on one occasion, we've received a list of consultants for the district, and that was given to us, I think, probably a couple years ago, and I think I've asked again for it. We have asked, I think, as a group, for an update of consultants that we currently contract with. And I think it's important that in terms of systems thinking that we're looking at the elimination of relationships and sometimes, favoritism that might be, or a bias that might be exerted by individuals that are either current employees, former employees, related to current or former employees that have some particular association with our organization. And I think that may in fact be the case in this particular consultant arrangement. And so my concern is that we need to, as a district, ensure that we are not awarding contracts to individuals without a competitive process in place and competitive review. And so in terms of promoting a good code of ethics, a fair playing field, and the inclusion of other providers in our community that may provide a particular similar service, that we ought to have all of our consultant arrangements reviewed through a bid process, or at least opened up to a bid process, because I would grant to you that there may be a number of people qualified to provide these services or entities, And I know of a few that we've had in the past that probably would serve here. But I think this lends the opportunity to talk about the broader issue, and that is equality in the process of bidding. And I think that whether it's the $25,000 figure or it's a $10,000 figure, that if a consultantship is proposed by any department in our organization, then there ought to be a bid process to ensure that there's an opportunity for people who provide those services an opportunity to bid.
Mr. Oberst, remind us, please. It is the bid process. Who qualifies for the bid process? So it's goods over services, correct? Or construction services?
Construction services and acquisition of goods required by law. Well, we had some changes to the purchasing policy to conform with the new federal guidelines back, you may recall, in June. So there's this function of micro purchasing, which really doesn't require a formal bid process, but based on the dollar amount, goods and construction services need to be competitively bid. Consulting type services don't. Now, we as a general rule, and I will tell you, since I have been in this role almost 5 years now, that at least all the business type services that we have contracted for historically, I've made it a policy internally to bid those things out at least every 5 years. You may recall we changed our banking relationship a couple of years ago with the bid process, the whole bond underwriting, which hadn't gone on for a long time. Even though I was not required to bid out those services, we did, and so those kinds of things. So I will tell you, Dr. Flores, that I wholeheartedly agree with your perspective on things, and I think the next step would be for this board to direct the policy committee, because it will require a formal policy change in the board policies to review that and make some recommendations for policy. Purchasing policy changes.
That was going to be my comment, is that that sounds more policy derived than what this committee would do, although ultimately I think that we can make the request to the policy committee, which I believe you're on now, right? Correct. But my only counter argument, and I agree with everything you said, except that I do think the relationships matter, and especially individuals who are in our schools, supporting our schools. So I think that there is value to some consistency. So I would think there could be risk in rebidding something on certainly an annual or maybe even biannual basis. I think there's some benefit to long-term contracts and to developing relationships with consultants. So I would ask that you also take that into consideration as you move it to policy.
Yeah, and mine is a caution of relationships that are based on cronyism or nepotism, which is a matter that I think that we ought to deal with, and that we've had some historical issues with. And I know that when I came onto this board some years ago, that was one of the first issues that I took up. And I think that it's a matter of data. I think that any consultant that does business with us, we ought to have also not just the name of a corporation, but the entity principals, the owners. We ought to have information so that we can connect the dots. I think that that's really important. I personally, log on to Lara. I look and see who the principals are, if in fact they're reported, because I'd like to know. I'd like to know that we are not monopolizing or enabling people to monopolize all of the business that is conducted through the Grand Rapids Public Schools, and that funds, public taxpayer funds, are not being generated to just certain group of individuals. And I think that's the cautionary perspective that I approach this matter with.
I will tell you, and our purchasing director is not here today, but our new vendor approval process does look into those backgrounds. We also have a responsibility under the federal guidelines to ensure that any vendors that we work with don't have shady paths, so to speak, or as you've, I think, alluded to, maybe have some ownership interests, silent partners, so to speak, that we need to know about before that. So there is that process in place. It's a lot easier now with the public information and the internet. in terms of long-time providers, there's generally, because we do know them, there's generally not an ongoing background review process, so to speak. But some of the concerns you brought up and some of the suggestions brought up, I think it's certainly best addressed at the ad hoc policy committee, which still exists, I think, right?
Yes.
This next
Yes,
year.
yes.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I
So,
think that
no, I
information
appreciate-
is
yep.
the key.
Yep.
If I can interrupt. Information is the key. And when requests are made, such as I have made in a repeated fashion to the administration, for information, such as annual list of consultants that we contract with, that helps us to review. And especially when you're dealing with large figures of $100,000. $100,000 will make a business successful. And if you happen to be my friend, or you live in my neighborhood, okay, or you live in my city or my township, we'll forget about the policies of the district in terms of Grand Rapids First and providing equal opportunity for all groups to compete. And I think that that's wrong. I think that it's ethically wrong, and we need to be dealing with that in a proactive manner.
So Dr. Flores, I think as I think about the role of the board is to set policy that enables our financial office to do exactly what you're saying. And so that's where we need to spend our energy. I don't think it's appropriate for a board member to review every single individual that we contract with. Our goal is to set policy that will eliminate all of what you're talking about so that we are doing the best thing for our children. So that's absolutely where I think that should be handled, but do certainly understand and appreciate your concerns. All right, so in front of us right now is just whether or not we're going to approve that increase in blanket order amongst the other purchases. Any other questions or comments about what's on the purchasing agenda this evening? All right, very good. Can I have a motion, please, to move forward the purchasing agenda to the full board? Well, I can support that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right, carried forward. Motion approved. All right, on to donations, please.
5 donations for your consideration. The first from Apple Education for high-quality computer headphones for Burton Elementary. Total value of about $47,000. Burton Elementary, Ms. Williams would know this, but Craig, was it 2 years ago Apple provided all those devices? It's been 2 years, almost 3 years ago. And that's the reason they followed up with these headphones. It's a difficult time of hanging on to high-quality headphones with some of these kids, so they've been very gracious to donate that for about $47,000 of the value of those.
Great, and then for the benefit of Ms. Williams, will you just inform her of why we approve these donations? And yeah, thank you.
Again, another board policy, it's kind of two-pronged, if it will, as it relates to donations and grants from private organizations, like foundations primarily. Any grants that anticipate to be $100,000 or above, the board needs to be made aware that we are applying for those grants. And then any donations or grants that we receive that are $2,500 or in excess of that need to be formally accepted by the board, or again, the finance committee first, and to the board. So that's why these are coming to the finance committee. These are all exceed that $2,500 threshold, if you will.
Perfect. Any questions on this donation? All right, may I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
I'll support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, very good. Motion approved. Consumers Energy.
Consumers Energy is to donate a number of, I guess there's almost 23, there we go,
2,340 of these.
drying units.
Oh, lovely.
This is I guess a joint venture. Consumers Finance, a company that builds these green glove dryers. They are intended to sit on a horizontal heating unit. They just showed up one day.
Oh,
So
really?
we have held them
Aw.
in supply until we got approval. The intent is they would sit and heat would be forced through to dry mittens. We have asked some questions for history on what they've done to heating costs in a room or the temperatures, and they really haven't tracked that. We've also asked about air quality with wet mittens. So what they did assure us was if we're not comfortable putting them on a register, we could just set them in the hall and put mittens on to help air dry. So rather than send them away and potentially bring them back, we accepted the order, told them we would hold them until the board approved the acceptance of the donation. But they're intended roughly to be 5 units in every elementary classroom, and that's what they are.
It's valued at $20,000.
All right, excellent. Questions or comments about this donation? I'm having memories of putting wet mittens on as a kid. You know, you just don't forget that feeling. Yes, I think it's great. Long, of course, as it works well for our kids and our teachers. All right, may I have a motion to approve or move forward the Consumers Energy donation, please?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next donation, Heart of West Michigan United
Yeah,
Way.
item 3, this is donations from activities, I'm going to call it, with United Way. And they're listed there, the Volunteer Center, and then from an entity called Women United. There is no value attached to these, and frankly, these organizations being nonprofit, it's not important to them. Likely more than $2,500, but certainly important enough to bring to the board for your review and acceptance.
Okay, questions or comments? All right, may I have a motion, please, to move forward this donation to the full board?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, 4th one, Whirlpool Corporation. They have donated 4 washer dryer combination units to go into our special education programs at CTC Mayfield to help from that transition of the folks there in terms of activities, daily living and vocation training skills. Those units are valued at total at $6,000. And obviously they stay with the program, so the impending transfer of this to the county, to ISD, obviously those units will stay with the programs.
Very good. Questions or comments on this donation? May I have a motion, please, to move this forward?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, last.
Okay, the Dream Fund, and I talked about this a little bit, I believe it was the last board meeting. Dream Fund through the Community Foundation is another allocation of up to $165,000 as part of the Challenge Scholars program. So it's available for the Challenge Scholar middle school, high school, and it allows for teachers and administrators to apply for smaller grants. And then as of January 1st of this year, parents can apply for grants, as well as outside organization can apply for grants to be used for the benefit of these buildings. If you look at the memo that I've drafted, you'll see that there are 3 categories of grants: a micro grants, which are $1,000 or less; the mini grants between $1,000 and $10,000, and then as of 1st of January, these large grants that could be up to $50,000. It's an online application process. People can apply for the grants. And we've met with Community Foundation on a couple of occasions. This kind of came up last fall, and we weren't really made aware of how this was going to work. And so we were all of a sudden getting requests for dollar amounts, and the business office, we weren't really familiar with the program or what responsibility, all those kinds of things. So we met with the Community Foundation initially last fall, and then again, I think just after the first of the year as this new program to solidify how this is going to work and the process that they need to ensure takes place. So they ultimately have responsibility of Community Foundation for how the dollars are spent, and any Any amounts that are granted that are not spent completely stay with the school. So the process is they apply, an individual, or in this case now an organization applies for the grant online, has to first be approved by the building administrator as well as the executive director of that particular building. And at that point, and that's essential to make sure it's consistent and appropriate for what we're trying to achieve at the individual schools. Then it goes to a committee. That the Community Foundation is set up, made up of administrators, students. I believe now a parent or two will be on the committee, and GR Community Foundation representatives. They review the applications, and then they either approve them or not approve them. Any applications that come from GR's Grand Rapids Public School employees. So any of our teachers, administrators, or our employees that apply and receive grants, the dollars come to the business office and they go into the building, we call our principal account, to be spent for the intended purpose. The reporting requirements reside with the individual applicant. It's simply a brief memo that goes to the Community Foundation. As I indicated, if they don't spend everything that was given to them, it still stays with the building. So we being GRPS don't have any formal responsibility for reporting, although we have made it clear to the building principals, administrators, that they certainly have a responsibility to make sure those funds are spent appropriately. Now, what we're asking for tonight from the Finance Committee, ultimately the board, is first of all to approve the actual grant amount, which is up to $165,000. Then from the $165,000 fund, as I just indicated, there are individual grants that come out of that. We believe, and I've had conversations with Sharon Pitts, internal counsel, that your approval of $165,000 fulfills essentially your technical obligation of accepting that donation. The individual grants, we would not like to, and really don't have to bring to you for those that exceed $2,500. But what we're proposing in the memo is, again, in the spirit of transparency, is anything below the $2,500, there's no reporting requirements, but anything between $2,500 and just under $10,000, $9,999, that you leave that formal approval process, as I described, not only with the building administrator and executive director, but myself and Mary Jo Coleman, who assistant administrator who deals with this program. So we can make those approval. Then we report to you on a monthly basis. Those particular grants are between the $2,500 and the $10,000. Any grants over $10,000, again, those were just allowable as of January 1st. We would individually bring those to you for an approval process, to just as we're doing now. But discussion with Ms. Pitts, that's approving the $165,000 satisfies the policy requirement. Just, as I said, as a matter of those smaller grants, getting them out to the buildings for their use, let us approve additional level of approval at our level, and then we report to you those amounts on a monthly basis, what they were used for. So that's what we're asking for the Finance Committee to consider tonight. And approve that, if you would.
Right. Questions or comments about the Dream Fund? This conference that I was at last weekend, National School Board Conference, during the Equity Symposium, we heard a keynote from the teacher who developed DonorsChoose.org, the crowdfunding source for teachers in schools. And I learned a lot. I didn't know all of the back end of how that works, but one of the ways they protect the assets is that they make the purchase. They don't ever send dollars. Yeah. So moving forward, it might be something to consider in these kinds of instances where we ask the Community Foundation instead to make the purchase and provide the product or good to the school. Something for consideration. But yeah, I was interested to hear how that worked. All right, may I have a motion, please, to move this forward to the full board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, Budget Amendment 1. Let's do it.
All right, we are on to Amendment 1, and again, for the benefit of Ms. Williams, by June 30th of each year, required by law for the board to approve our annual budget. And as with any budget, there are certain estimates made at that point in time, information that's certainly not available or becomes clear down the road. And so 100% of the time, in perpetuity, we at least amend the budget once during the year, oftentimes twice. And generally the first amendment comes during this time frame, the January, early February board meetings. At that point, we have the fall count date. Although the numbers aren't audited yet, they have been filed and certified. And so we have a better sense of what our count is going to be in terms of our foundation allowance. Again, the enrollment numbers that we get paid our foundation allowance is based on 10% of last February's count and 90% of the past October count. So we obviously have past or February's count already. We had the certified October account, and that's what the Amendment 1 is based on, that new enrollment number. We'll have another February count, obviously, next week, and generally the audited October counts are not finalized till May. And so oftentimes we'll bring a second amendment in May to reflect updated accounts and any other updated information that becomes available. The law, as well as accounting principles, require that the ultimate budget be our best estimate of what we think the year is going to come out at. Obviously, there's always some differences, so that's why we need to make the amendments a couple times during the year. One of the other differences this year, and for Ms. Schottky and Dr. Flores who are around, you may recall that our health insurance benefits, the whole hard cap thing, both the MESA, which covers our MEA union employees, and now the insurance pool, which covers the other employees, have gone. They used to be on a July through June fiscal year. MESA a year ago went to a calendar year. So generally we made hard cap adjustments on July 1st of each year, which corresponded with our budget year. Now those hard cap adjustments get pushed forward until January. So we're back budgeting, back last April and May, trying to, not knowing what the hard caps are going to be. The hard cap adjustments come out in October. So they went to effect for the first time this year on January 1st, but we didn't know that back in May and June when we were doing this annual budget. So we obviously trued that up to what those actual hard caps actually came out to be. And actually now with the new governor, there's going to be those hard cap amounts are going to change. In terms of when they come out, they're going to come out earlier for us starting this year. So there's a number of those kinds of adjustments that become aware of. Actually, we have the property tax valuations are in place, are not in place when we do the budget, are in place now, so we have a better idea what the revenue from our property taxes are going to come for special revenue, in particular the center-based programs. And then we have 6 months of operations behind us in terms of staffing levels and what that's looking like. So all those factors factor into Amendment 1, that primarily the biggest impact are on the general fund and the special revenue fund. Special revenue fund, the two big funds there are the center programs and then the food service program, which is all federal funds. The other major fund that we have to adopt budget for and amend is a debt retirement fund. The adjustments there are generally related to, again, the property valuations that come in. That funds our debt retirement, so the interest and principal payments funded with a dedicated millage based on property values, so we have a better idea what that's going to look like. So that's kind of the background of the amendment process for the budget. As it relates to, Cindy, did we get those fund balance? No, we didn't. Can you send them out to their members, please? Ms. Williams, there's also, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes here, but there's also, as of a few years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, a new legislation which we refer to as early warning that essentially required that school districts maintain a minimum 5% fund balance, general fund balance. If it goes below that, there's a number of additional reporting requirements initially, and then potentially some other cures that the Treasury Department, which actually administers that program, not Education, Treasury. So, the minimum, we have a fund balance policy that says we endeavor to get it up to about 10%, and don't, for the 5% variance either way, so to speak. So anyways, when we do amendments, we do the final or the annual budgets, we also look at where that impact on the general fund balance is so that we stay within that minimum 5% parameter. So if you look first at the general operating fund budget, and we've taken, the presentation is the way it's been similarly in the past. We have on the first page, you see your revenue amounts. I'm looking at your packet now. We'll get to the spreadsheet in just a minute. And the first column there is the original budget that the board adopted back in June. The middle column, titled Amendment 1, is the impact of Amendment 1. On the first page, it's the impact on the revenue sources, and then third column there is the actual amended budget if the board approves Amendment 1. Generally, for the general fund revenue, we have some increases related to truing up of the property values, as well as a lot of what's in the general fund is our grants too, our title grants. And we don't always know the full Title I and Title II, Title III, Title IV grant revenue amounts when we do our budget back in June. So much of that revenue increase is actually related to the additional grant revenue that we anticipate having in 2018-19. Again, just to educate Ms. Williams here, grants have zero impact on fund balance. Whatever we spend on a grant is the amount of revenue we receive in the grant, so that has no impact on fund balance. So even though we're seeing about a $6.6 million increase in grant revenue in Amendment 1, there also will be a $6.6 million increase in the expenses for that grant. So zero impact on fund revenue. The actual revenue impact on the board funds, if you will, is a decrease of revenue of $496,000, and that has a lot to do with truing up. We came in, the enrollment projections, given the fall enrollment, is less than what we had projected at budget time, so there's lost revenue related to that, and some various sources of increased revenue. If you look at this page of your packet, you'll see some of the individual impacts, individual line impacts of the revenue. If you look down on line K under state sources, you can see that there, line K, decrease of $1,562,000. That's primarily a result of reduced enrollments from projections. Then on the expense side for the general fund, as is the case in most years, the big chunk of our expenditures are in people costs, both salaries and benefits. And so we true up many of the increases or decreases for that matter in expenses relate to the people costs. As I mentioned just a minute ago, some additional costs related to the hard cap increases that we now know that take effect. Also, there are changes with open enrollment in terms of some of the selections that people make, which has an impact. We also know what the retirement payments are going to be for the current year. Back again when this budget is accepted and presented in June, we don't know finalized because it comes from the state, finalized impact of retirement costs and percentages that are applied to the various categories of retirement benefits, if you will. So if you look at item on that, again on this individual line item, line CC, you can see a salary and benefit adjustment of about almost 1.4 million increase in expenses that is as a result of those people costs. Just below that in DD, increase in projected substitute costs. Again, we still have a number of openings not only in the teaching ranks, but the last couple of years in the administrative secretary ranks too. Where this kind of full employment situation in the county has made it difficult to hire all around. So we've had to increase the number of substitutes we have in a number of areas. So total expense increases on the board dollars is the bottom line there, $1.645 million. When it's all said and done, we have a impact on the general fund of Amendment 1 of reducing fund balance by $2.1 million approximately. So if you take that decrease and look now to your colored spreadsheet, and what I have there is some history of the last couple of years. If you look at the light green column, it says 2018-19 budget. That was the budget that was presented and accepted and approved in June. Came away with a projected fund balance at that point in time of almost 8.5%. With Amendment 1 and the decrease of 2.1 million gets us to a projected fund balance at the end of the year of about 7%, which is still within our 5% threshold. You can also look back to the gray column, the light blue column, the light orange column of the prior years. You can see what happened last year. We started out with a fund balance projection of 5.71%. Amendment 1 actually raised it to 7.35, and Amendment 2, 7.61. We came in at 10.28. We have historically been conservative in our estimates. It's also a very complex and complicated district, so there's always going to be some changes. So we've been fortunate most years to pick up a little bit of fund balance at the end of the year when all's said and done. So the 7%, like I said, is within our threshold of a 5%, trying to get to a 10%, and it gives us still some breathing room for the rest of the 6 months. So that is the general fund Amendment 2 budget, or Amendment 2 general fund, Amendment 1 for the general fund. Questions particular on that? And we are required to approve individually all three of these funds, which we have to have budgets for: general fund, special revenue, and debt retirement.
Okay, thank you. No questions from me. Ready? Okay, very good. Then may I have a motion, please, to move forward the general operating fund resolution to the full board? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, quickly in the special revenue fund. Again, special revenue fund does not have any fund balance requirements, although we run a positive fund balance. Special revenue includes center programs, food service, which are the two major programs. Most of the revenues and expenses are in those two programs. It also includes the GRASS program, which is a summer education program that was developed a number of years ago that we sell to other districts and other individuals. And then Hausman Field is also special revenue fund. The major change, again, related to Amendment 1 for special revenue relates to the center programs, which we still run. This will be the last year we'll deal with that. They'll go to the ISD next year. But again, it's related to enrollments, adjustments. It's funded, the center programs is funded primarily with special taxes from the county, which is based on property values. So again, we have updated property values, so we adjust revenue for those updated property values. And we've actually, over the last number of years, have been very diligent in reducing costs of that program. So as we complete and finish up the final 2018 financials for that program, we also project, because any excess costs, which there always is, are then billed to the individual districts within the ISD who utilize those services. So they want to have some idea for their budgeting purposes what they're going to have to spend. So we go through an estimate for them of the 2009, in this case 18-19 costs, and we make some adjustments. So that's also based on enrollment. So the Amendment 1 presumes a little additional state aid, a little additional millage dollars, but we have 77 fewer folks that are in the programs than what we had projected as of the beginning of the year when we did the approved budget, and also lower costs. So that is the major impact of special revenue. It actually reduces their fund balance by about $363,000, which would leave them a fund balance end of the year, or the total special revenue fund balance of $4.3 million. Again, no requirement to have a minimum 5%. Any fund balance that remains at the end of this 19 obviously goes with the programs over to the ISD. We do not keep any of that at GRPS.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the special revenue fund? All right, may I have a motion, please, to move this forward to the full board? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. And then debt retirement funds, I mentioned in my opening comments, a couple of adjustments related to revenue. One is increased property taxes based on increased values. And the other positive thing is we have seen over the last year, short-term interest rates in general go up, so we're actually earning some additional dollars on our investments. Any excess bond funds are invested. And so we've adjusted our investment income up by $80,000. So total increase, Amendment 1 increase in revenue of $283,000, the debt retirement fund. And again, that's specific to pay interest and principal payments when due, which primarily are in May and November of each year.
All right, questions or comments on the debt retirement fund? May I please have a motion to move this resolution forward to the full board?
Support.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, reports. Financial
Okay,
statements.
yeah, quickly reports. December financial statements are the dashboard report, or the financial dashboard. Again, the annual budget line, middle column there, just still reflects the adopted budget last year. The board approves amendments at the next meeting. We will update that for next month. Also had, when Mr. Ross and I met a week and a half ago and go over this information, he actually had some suggestions maybe to make this dashboard report easy to understand. So I've worked on some changes that I'll go over with him. You may see probably will see a new format next month for your review and to see if that makes more sense to you. So, but we are, I spoke about some of the differences, obviously, with the amendments. That's the financials for 6 months are tracking toward where the amendments are going to take us in the end of the year. So nothing much else on the financial dashboard. And then behind that, as usual, Mrs. Williams, is a lot of the detail. For those that like to get into the detail, we don't talk about it here, but it is there for your review at a later date. So.
Well, I'm going to miss the spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets, but that's all right. I think that's a great idea. All right, thank you for that report. Any questions, committee? All right, very good. Warm, safe, and dry. Mr. Klumperens.
Nothing new for warm, safe, and dry, so I'm going to move right into bond.
Perfect.
This to come up. I wanted to share the renderings on the new Southwest Community Campus High School. We are out to bid, and we will open bids on Thursday. They will come back to the February Finance Committee meeting prior to going to the board. This is part of the Plaza Roosevelt development on Granville between Rumsey and Graham. Following from the transformation plan, this is what we call a small high school. It will serve 500 students maximum. Right now we're looking at grades 7 through 12 as it grows up. The split between 6th and 7th between the Southwest Community Campus Elementary and this building maximizes the grade level access all the way through from pre-K up to 12. This is a 4-story building. It is a tight site, an urban site. It doesn't have a lot of the traditional campus amenities a high school would, but it is very comparable in size to what we did at the Frost High School. This is just a site plan showing level 1 and 2, but we maximize whatever parking we can get and fit it onto the site. Level 1 is the entry on the bottom of the sheet is at the parking lot level. One of the community input items was to make that entry look as nice as the main front entry, so it doesn't look like a back door, which we did, but we'll also allow a security checkpoint at that door as well as the front door. This level is set to be our public and community use level with the gym, the cafeteria, which can be used by neighborhood groups, and still isolate the remaining part of the building and keep it secure. The main level, the entry is up on the top of the sheet. It would force visitors into the front office for clearance into the building. On this level, we have the office suite. We also have the 2 science rooms and the music and art, which are also community use and more directly tied to collaboration with the Cook Arts Center, which is directly to the upper right. The third level is all classrooms and what the architect calls a knowledge center or the media center or the library. That is on that level, and that can be secured from the other 2 levels for safety purposes for our students. Between level 3 and level 4, we have 21 classrooms plus 4 special ed spaces, 1 full-size classroom, 3 smaller size. Plus we have the 2 science rooms, plus the music and art room. Oops, I went the wrong way. 4th level is classrooms only. This is a cutaway view of the building, just to give an idea of the 4 levels. The media center, the knowledge center, is above the gymnasium. And cutaway. And then this would be from the Rumsey Street side looking northeast to the front entry, the windows to the office. The yellow band, we've had meetings to take input from students, staff, the neighborhood groups, and community. And if I remember correctly, the overwhelming support was for a blue color, and that will also carry through to the interior color scheme. That's a little different than what's shown here. This is from the Graham Street side looking southeast. You can see there's significant grade change to the site. We're building into the side of the hill. This is from This is high above, this will be above the Cook Art Center, again looking southeast. The area that's in green to the lower right is still to be determined who will own and operate that, but it is designated in the site plan as a green space and community use space. So this will be from the Graham Street side looking southwest. The big wall is the outer of the gym. It does have a glass clear story band around the top to let light into the gym. And then if the name stays Southwest Community Campus or changes, we will adapt that banding up above on the Knowledge Center. And that will be visible from US 131. This is from the Rumsey Street side looking northwest. Interior, this would be the parking lot entry level coming out of the security office with an open lobby and open stair up to the main level. Again, from the entry going up. Cafeteria. Again, the cafeteria. Whoops. The gymnasium. The lobby up on the second level or the front level entry. There is a spot for a mural, and we'll develop that similarly we have done in other buildings where that's done on a panel system. It's easier to maintain. And then across from that is the welcome area or the office, and during the day it will force visitors into either the security office on the first level or this office on the second level for clearance into the building. And this goes back to the input we received on city, where the two students gave very good input what they wanted in a high school, and it was comfort in the rooms, heat and air. They wanted to be safe. They wanted a secure building. They wanted good restrooms. Well, this is a new building, so they'll be new. And they wanted, specific to that building, science labs. And we're providing any specific classrooms for each building as appropriate. In this case, there are 2 science labs. This is the main office. Some teacher prep area, has a health clinic,
Beautiful.
and science lab, and then the color scheme, the original color scheme had different colors per floor. That will change in the designation to incorporate the community input on color scheme. Music room, art room.
It's beautiful. Mr. Klomparens, I'm watching the time, so I'm going to move us
our
along here.
Knowledge Center.
All right.
And
I don't think of you as
typical
long-winded.
classroom.
So.
And that's
Yes.
the end of it.
Oh, it's
But we did wanna
gorgeous.
share it.
Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you.
We did close on that land last Tuesday. Ken went out. Ken went out in the
good.
mess and
Yes.
closed on it. So
Thank you.
Just a heads up, we are opening bids on this on Thursday. We'll bring them back to the next meeting. The Ottawa project is scheduled to open bids on February 28th. We are asking that the March meeting be moved to March 18th ahead of the board meeting. So we
Okay.
can, take action
with
on
Mr.
that
Ross on
and
that.
move
Okay.
forward.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Seeing it brings it alive, and how grateful I am that our children will have a great space. Everyone deserves to learn in a great space. So awesome work. Just quickly, January revenue.
yeah, just quickly,
consensus.
January Revenue Consensus Conference was held on January 11th, and that's the last few pages of your packet. There's a little summary of that. I guess to summarize it, still positive growth in the state budget, both the general fund and the school aid fund. The other trend that continues in this state, has for the last 10 or 12 years, is enrollments statewide continue to decrease. They also look at that. We're expecting a decline this year of 13,000 students statewide, and next year in 1920 of over 10,000. And the very last page of that, which is titled School Aid Fund Balance Sheet. And without getting into a lot of detail what that all means, if you look at the third column there called baseline, the very last number, 263.2, that's essentially how much new money, based on the estimates in May or in January, would be available for the 1920 year. If you take the total number of students statewide, divided by that number, just 263 by the 1.4 million, it's about $180 per student, potentially, that the foundation allowance could increase. The interesting thing about that last page, they look at the very, near the bottom there, it says community colleges, higher education. You can see the almost $1 billion that comes out of the school aid fund to fund higher education, and that was never the intent. So, so there will be another revenue consensus conference in May, and any final state budget decisions will not be made till after that conference in May. So that's it.
All right, excellent. Okay, with that, I adjourn this meeting of the Finance Committee. Thank you.